Hey everyone, Warwick's here. So we're back, another video here, Balanced Druid this time. This one's probably not going to be as in-depth as Guardian Druid because admittedly of the 4 Druid specs, Balanced Druid's the one that I'm the least comfortable and know the least about. I'm sure some of the Moon King content creators that are out there will be making videos on this stuff as they get off their shifts for World First casting, because I know quite a few of them are out there doing that, or they're in their raids. Or they're focused on their raids rather, but figured I'd go ahead and make a video, at least give kind of a guy that is somewhat is familiar with Moonkin but doesn't know the details of everything just yet, as he's still kind of learning Moonkin and Dragonflight. But for those of you that are not aware, Blizzard announced the 10.0.5 development PTR notes yesterday. They put that out while just before I went into raid. And then they updated the trees for both Balance and Guardian Druid while I was in raid, because both trees got basically redesigned, and Feral also got some changes, but the Feral trees as of recording have not yet been updated on the PTR version of Wowhead. So once that gets updated, I'll be doing a video on Feral, of course, as well, because I raid as Feral, so it is of big interest to me as to what they're doing with that tree. But what I wanted to do with this video to start with is do a comparison. So above my fat head is the current live trees that we have right now on Dragonflight. If you log into the game, this side is going to be the talent trees that you see. And on the right side here are the talent trees that are currently being used in PTR. So we get kind of a comparison, and as you can see from the Druid tree perspective, because it did get overhauled, obviously a lot more connections going in, which opens up a little bit more options for build diversity. But the general shape and structure of the tree itself hasn't really changed much. There are some changes that do impact Balanced Druids. We'll talk about that as we get into the PTR side of the tree. But for the most part, the Druid class tree, its basic form has stayed the same. They just did a lot better with adding more connections, reduced some point bloat in the tree, and added 1 or 2 talents that, while I don't think is going to be a big impact on Moonkin, do impact some of the other specs though. And I've already talked about Guardian. You can go watch that video. I'll link it up here so that you can go see it if you're interested. The Balance spec tree, though, as you can see, has definitely gone more like a thick owl, and has gone to a little bit more of a skinny owl in terms of its shape. The bottom of the tree in particular actually looks like, owl feet instead of whatever this is in terms of the shape. They try to do this with a lot of the trees if they can, and try to do something that kind of shows off the shape. The new Guardian Druid tree looks very much like a bear paw. You have like a tree look for Restoration Druid. There's like a cat paw shape. Like a lot of the trees try to make this type of shape, make some sort of shape that's kind of relevant to the spec. Some do it more successfully than others, but as you can see, they made some decent little changes here. Kind of opened up and closed off some connections as needed to kind of hopefully make the tree flow a little bit better. And they made some adjustments to the talents themselves and update those. So as you can see, the balance spec tree looks quite different. And so we're going to take a look and see what on the balance tree is being done here. And we're going to take a look at it right now. So let's blow this back up and let's get this big again. And we're going to go full screen mode on this one. So let's look at the class tree first, and what are the big changes to it that impact balance? So of course, Star Surge gets shifted over 1 spot from where it was. It used to be right below Starfire. Sunfire has now moved up into this spot, and Improved Sunfire has taken Old Sunfire's place. Now, Balanced Druid still gets Star Surge off the bat, so it's not that big of a deal. It impacts them negligibly when it comes to point allocation. You don't have to go out of your way to get this thing that doesn't connect to anything. You're just getting it. So no impact on Balanced Druid from that standpoint. However, you get Sunfire early on, which means you get double dots early on if you're leveling a Balanced Druid. And then, of course, Moonkin form. And then, of course, you're going to grab 2 points in Nurturing Instinct. This used to be a 3-point talent, now down to 2, so you save a point throughout your tree. Now, you need 4 more points in order to get down further into the tree. Most Moonkins are coming down this part of the tree right here where you're grabbing Wild Growth. And I'd say you're probably grabbing Remove Corruption as well, just to give you some little bit of off-healing capabilities. The Balanced Druids can cast Regrowth in form, but the other ones would take them out. But there is some potential for you to be able to do some off-healing in between pulls, or if there's a section of time where you don't really attack a boss all that much, you can shift out throw out a few heals, shift back into form when it's time to attack the boss or attack ads or whatever the case may be. So Balance Druid is kind of the best suited to dipping into the resto tree of the 3 non-resto specs. And these 4 points right here allow us to open up down into the tree, where of course you're taking Astral Influence to get the extra 5 yards, and you're going to take Improved Sunfire because it's the best way to get down to the rest on to the sub 20 gate here. Improved Rejuve is not really going to be the spot for that. You'll also take Wild Charge, Tiger Dash, and Stampeding Roar. The other thing that you might see happen with the balance tree is, instead of doing this right here, they'll take Rejuve, grab Improved Bark Skin, Verdant Heart, and Iron Fur so that they can put a couple points in Thick Hide. That is also a very viable option for balanced druids, particularly for raid builds. I think for Mythic Plus builds, you'll probably dip more into the resto side, but for raid builds, you're going to see them go this way, where they can come down and grab Thick Hide to get that 6% damage reduction on top of all the armor they already bring to the table. I still think Wild Charge is good because they get a disengage out of it. Soothe and Stampeding Roar, just so you can get access to Lakara's teachings, which are going to be, it's one of the best talents on the tree itself. Now we have 4 points left to spend in order to open up the rest of the tree. There's a few options that you can get here. You can grab Matted Fur just to get a little bit of an absorb shield on Bark Skin when you pop it for like a defensive measure, or just in general to kind of help mitigate some rot damage and things of that nature. That is an option on this tree. You can grab some control mobs as you need it with Hibernate and Typhoon. You can go that route. You can come down and grab these 4 points to grab your off healing stuff a little bit, which I think I will do generally, because it just opens up possibilities in the tree for you. And we need 1 more point somewhere in the tree. You can grab almost anything you want. We'll grab Matted Fur because I think it's generally the most bang for your buck. You're going to take 3 points in Lakara's teachings. You'll take, Ursol's Vortex here, just because it's the most generally effective for any ads that you might be grouping up or need to group up. Innervate, because Innervate is always valuable in a raid situation, and now in a Mythic Plus situation, it might be even as valuable because the seasonal affix doesn't really do much in the way of giving back mana. And then Nature's Vigil just allows you to take what you do best, your single target damage, and turn it into a little bit of off healing. And then kind of these last 5 points, I think you can kind of spend wherever you want. You can go grab Mighty Bash with a couple of points in Well-Honed Instincts, and then Protector of the Pack to make it so that you can regrowth yourself and get a little bit of a boost healing on that. Like if the healer's struggling a little bit, you can throw out a big regrowth on somebody, either on yourself or on a teammate, without dropping form, and be able to excuse me, and be able to kind of support it that way. You can go put a point in Renewal. You can put a point in Improved Roar if you want to, because you have another point to spend. I think Renewal is generally the safest pick. If you don't want to go down and grab Protector of the Pack, you can also drop Protector of the Pack and grab Heart of the Wild to make your off healing a little bit more efficient. I think that's perfectly viable too for both Mythic Plus and raid situations. I don't think there's a bad pick overall. It's just kind of more sort of situational. That said, Renewal is off the GCD, usable in all forms, and is a 30% max health boost on a 90-second cooldown. It's just a really, really good ability to have, and now that it's not competing with Wild Charge, it's probably one of the sneakiest, best tools in a Druid's kit, period. But Balance especially is also going to have some really nice flow with it. Now for Mythic Plus, it's just going to kind of depend. You can drop Protector of the Pack and maybe a point in Well-Honed Instincts to grab Hibernate or Typhoon, depending on what you need. There are some bosses where Typhoon will come into play. I'm thinking Granith and No Good Offensive, where if you can position yourself to stop the Centaur ad from going and destroying your Bashila, Typhoon can do that because it knocks them back and reduces their speed, just allows you that 6 seconds extra time of them being slower to quickly kill the ad, which as we get into higher and higher tyrannical bosses might be a thing that needs to happen. So something to think about with Typhoon. Hibernate, very limited use because it's only Beast or Dragonkin, so not a ton of those going on in this, amazingly enough. Not a lot of dragons in a Dragonflight expansion inside the dungeons. So there's still some safe picks here. You can still keep this build and just maybe switch out a point or two, drop Protector at the Pack for Typhoon if you need to. You kind of have some choice, I think, inside the tree. But I think generally speaking, this is probably a safe bet for something that you can take in almost all situations, and it's going to basically function. And then you can kind of specialize based off of what you need going further into the build. But I think this is kind of what you're going to see because Moonkins want this 6% damage reduction in almost all situations. Now the balance tree has had some really interesting changes, and it starts right at the top, obviously. Eclipse, Lunar Eclipse, if you saw the video that I made, that I dropped on Thursday, As of recording, this is going to go up on Saturday. So 2 days ago, as of this release. I talked about like Lunar Eclipse and the change from being additional crit to having additional splash damage. I think it's a big boon to Moonkin AoE and really helps our Mythic Plus viability. But the other big change right here at the top, Shooting Star is now right near the top, but so is Solar Beam. And in order to get Starfall, you have to take Solar Beam. Now there are going to be some builds probably in single target where you just kind of skip this part of the tree. Like you skip these talents here, and you would ultimately skip Lunar Shrapnel as well. It's more AoE focused, and in single target builds, you'd grab something like Warrior Balloon in order to get down this side of the tree, so you can grab Twin Moons and Umbral Intensity. But we're gonna have to see them. Moonkin's smarter than me are gonna determine if that's something that is valuable in doing, and instead of just getting Solar Beam and Starfall, so that you have stuff on intermittent ad phases. Something like Aranag or something like Dathia, Kurog, where you have multiple targets available at once. Starfall all of a sudden gains value. Do you just take that and not worry about Warrior Balloon or Force of Nature for raid? Has forever been pointless. But you're definitely taking Solstice, and I definitely think you end up taking Stellar Flare, and I definitely think you take Nature's Balance in almost all generalist builds. I'm gonna go ahead and grab these 3 talents because I think the Starfall extending your dot duration up to 7 times is going to be quite nice, even in single target situations. But again, I could be wrong. Umbral Embrace has been moved. It's right here now. Just allows you to shift your nature and arcane damage into astral damage and do bigger stuff. I think Umbral Embrace is a good talent, as is Umbral Intensity, because it just makes your Eclipse windows more powerful. Astral Smolder is here now. Your critical strikes from Starfire and Wrath cause the target to languish for 20% of the spell's damage over 4 seconds. With the reduction or the removal rather, of the crit off of Lunar Eclipse for Starfire, I think now crit becomes a much more valuable stat for balanced druids, and this talent also kind of cinches that idea. Instead of being pure haste mastery and you kind of ignore everything else, haste mastery crit are now all of a sudden going to be 3 stats that you can chase. So if you have like a mastery verse piece and you get like a haste verse piece or haste crit piece, then all of a sudden that piece of gear now is a little bit more valuable to you, particularly because dungeons like Shadow Moon Burial Grounds and Temple of the Jade Serpent have a lot of haste crit pieces from my quick glance over the dungeon journal. So I think Astral Smolder is a talent that you do take because anytime you can get extra free damage, you're going to take it. Celestial Alignment, I think, is an obvious pick, as is Syzygy or Orbital Strike or Pulsar. I think Pulsar is still better right now. Nature's Grace good for getting back into Eclipses faster because you're gaining that 15% haste, and Soul of the Forest increasing AP gen for Wrath and increasing Starfire's area damage by a massive amount. I think this is just a strong overall talent to have for both single target and AoE. For AoE, I think you grab Lunar Shrapnel, Starweaver, and Rattle the Stars. I think both are interesting. I think Rattle the Stars ultimately ends up being a little bit better. Excuse me, Starweaver. Well, I think Rattle the Stars for Raid is probably going to be a little bit better, and Starweaver for Mythic Plus. Again, smarter balanced druids than me will determine it. But the interesting thing that they did is on the old tree, you could skip Power of Goldrin by going through the mushroom talents. Well, they moved the mushroom talents down, so now you're forced basically to be able to take Power of Goldrin in order to get to this side of the tree. Or something like Radiant Moonlight, New Moon, Fury of Elune, both of them are very valuable single target pieces. Starlord has been moved down into this section below the 20 gates, so you can't use it to buff your talent points. Cosmic Rapidity is here. I think that's a easy pick because you're getting more dot damage, so you always take that. But I think this is interesting because now it kind of cuts off this side of the tree for single target, in my opinion, because you don't get really Sundered Element. Starlord you're going to take in almost all situations. Balance of All Things allows you to get that increased crit chance, which says synergize with Astral Smolder. I think for situations it could be good there. And then of course you take Incarnation and you get Elune's Guidance, which reduces the cost of your Star Surge and Star Falls while you have Incarnation active. That's really cool. You have Astral Communion, which is still kind of pointless. Orbit Breaker is always going to be good. But then, like, you have these last 3 points, and where do you spend them? Do you go into Fury of Elune and Radiant Moonlight to get the 15 seconds off Fury of Elune? Do you grab a couple points and grab Wild Mushroom? Do you get Denizens of the Dream and Friend of the Fae? Like, there's some really interesting potential balance possibilities here at the end of the tree, and I think this is probably the weakest part of the tree, is these last 2 tiers, because they lack that sort of interconnectivity with each other. And it's very much like the old, like, really kind of like a lot of the old trees where you're kind of just forcing you down a plane of existence, and I don't know if I'd like that a lot. Well, I think the changes in the middle of the tree are very interesting. The bottom of the tree, I think, became a lot weaker, and overall, I think that's probably not a good thing. In terms of what talent you take, I'll have to do some more research, honestly, on it. I'm just kind of giving my impressions of what the tree is and how good it is. I think overall, this is a net neutral change. The top and middle of the trees, I think, gain some real interesting possibilities. Solar Beam feeling a lot more mandatory in all content is an interesting change if you want Starfall. But like I said, I'm sure there's going to be people that determine that skipping that and taking something like Warrior of Elune or something along those lines are going to be much more valuable in order to get down into like Twin Moons, and then eventually come over here to Umbral Intensity, and you drop down the further down the tree as you go. I'm sure that's going to happen. But it makes Solar Beam A, much easier to access for Mythic Plus purposes, and B, makes it basically mandatory for Mythic Plus purposes because Starfall is gated behind your Interrupt, which I think is going to make some people angry. I'm personally okay with it. I'm of the opinion that any Interrupt effect should just be baseline into the kit anyways. Now, Balanced Druids is a little bit unique in that it's an AoE silence that can be really taken advantage of, but even then, I still think that just give it to them baseline and put something interesting there. So overall, like I said, I think the top and middle of the trees are probably better. The bottom of the tree definitely doesn't feel as good because you're very much kind of pigeonholed down rows depending on what you want to do, and I don't think that's the most effective use of time. So I'm going to say overall probably a net neutral for Balanced Druids, though knowing them and the way that they are, they're going to see this as the end of days, and they're going to complain endlessly on it about it for like the next 6 months. Even after it gets fixed, they'll still complain that this tree was once the way it was. But my opinion is that I think they might have some rights to complain, probably not to the level that they're going to, but I don't know if I like this new tree as much as I preferred the old one, which felt like it gave you a lot more options in how you wanted to tailor your gameplay. This one feels like it's forcing you into more options that aren't necessarily fun or intuitive to use or to play with. So we'll see how I'll definitely be following along with some of the high-end Moonkin content creators and kind of getting an idea from them on it. But my impression is that I get the feeling they're not going to be too thrilled with this, because as someone that is tacitly interested in will play Moonkin and Mythic Plus in particular to achieve a goal of 2k on all 4 Druid specs this season, the AoE side I think is probably mostly fine. I don't like that I have to get Power of Goldran in order to access Wild Mushroom. I think that's really bad. I would just like to see Lunar Shrapnel tied to Wild Mushroom again and make Power of Goldran feel, you know, it only hits one target at a time, so like it is very much a single target oriented build. Just buff it to make it worth it in single target and allow AoE builds to skip it because it has no value in AoE. But Blizzard have made the decision that if you want mushrooms, you have to get a little bit of single target in order to access some of your better AoE spells. We'll see what that does overall to the build diversities and things like that. I think it pigeonholes them a little bit more. Anyways, guys, that's the end of the video for this one. I don't have a ton on this. Like I said, I'm not super familiar with Balanced Druid, but I wanted to give my first impressions of the new trees. Like, share, subscribe. Tell me what you think if you're a Moonkin main in the comments below. Until the next video, I hope you're all staying safe. I hope you're enjoying yourself, you're having fun, you keep on gaming, and I will see you all in the next video.